Welcome back, fight fans. This video is brought to you by AB Combat. Today, we're going to take a look at 10 fighters who were never too opposed to bending the rules to get ahead. Whether they actually cheated inside the cage or were found to have used PEDs to unfairly get advantage, these guys certainly have a reputation for their antics, that's for sure. Yoel Romero. Fence grabs, short grabs, glove grabs, Yoel Romero has been caught doing it all. And who can forget the infamous stool incident, where Romero played dumb as his corner accidentally applied too much Vaseline on him, giving Yoel an extra 30 seconds to recover in between rounds. He, of course, used this time to immediately KO Tim Kennedy when the fight resumed. Oh, and his habit of missing weight has also led many to brand the Soldier of God as a weight bully who knows exactly what he's doing. We love you, Yoel, but come on. Chael Sonnen. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. This was a quote famously uttered by the great Chael Sonnen, and like Yoel Romero before him on this list, it's hard to stay too mad at the bad guy for living up to his nickname. But after dragging Anderson Silva to the very edge of defeat, only to lose by submission in the bout's embers, Chael's second loss in the rematch would be overshadowed in some ways by a failed drug test. He then failed yet another PED test a year later before leaving the UFC for Bellator. Ask Sonnen about this period of time nowadays, and he will very openly admit that he was roided up to the gills. Does Chael get a pass just because he admits it with a smile? Well, we'll leave that up to you. Victor Belfort. The TRT Vitor era of this legend's career was undeniably exciting, but this juiced-up version of the Brazilian legend scored some crazy finishes over guys like Dan Henderson, Luke Rockhold, and, in particular, Michael Bisping, who eventually lost his eye due to the damage he sustained at the hands of this powerhouse. Belfort's TRT exemption eventually did come to its end, and he truly never looked like the same fighter again. But by that point, the damage was already done, and several icons of the sport were left with the bill. Greg Hardy. Not knowing the rules is one thing, but in Greg Hardy's short but controversial UFC run, he somehow managed to set a new standard as far as in-cage cheating goes. Firstly, his illegal knee in his UFC debut against Alan Crowder was one thing, but when Hardy decided to use his inhaler in his fourth fight in between rounds, that's where things got dicey. For some reason, this former NFL believed that he would be allowed to use his inhaler in the middle of a live fight, something that was immediately shot down by the commentators, and while he did go on to win the bout, the result was overturned to a no contest. Chick Congo. Chick Congo has a real penchant for groin shots, and over the years he's had several instances of accidentally landing a shot to the nether regions in pivotal moments. He also pretty blatantly cheated against Travis Brown, grabbing onto his opponent's shorts whenever he could, especially if the referee's line of vision allowed him to. Look, we understand going above and beyond to get the win, but Chick Congo has a bit of a reputation at this stage for his antics. Josh Barnett. You don't need to fight dirty to be a dirty fighter, and for Josh Barnett, his multiple failed PED tests make him a shoo-in for this video. He failed twice in a row during his first UFC run, including his UFC heavyweight title win over Randy Couture, so naturally the UFC moved to strip him immediately and cut him from the promotion. Then, a few years later, he was set for the biggest fight of his career against Fedor Emelianenko in Affliction, but proceeded to test positive for anabolic steroids, losing the fight and the respect of the masses in one clean sweep. A career cheater and a guy whose reputation deserves to be tarnished. Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor might be the biggest star in the sport of MMA, but if you think that his massive exposure makes him any less likely to break the rules, think again. In two of his most high-profile bouts, Conor was very clearly cheating. First against Khabib Nurmagomedov, where from bottom he somehow got away with nailing Khabib right in the face with a knee while he was in side control. It's crazy how the ref didn't see it, but it certainly helped McGregor to get out of danger. Then against Dustin Poirier, as the Diamond postured up to rain down with ground and pound, Conor very obviously was holding on to his gloves, pulling him as he tried to create space. Call it flat-out cheating or veteran rule bending. Either way, Conor deserves his spot. Wes Sims. Wes Sims didn't spend long in the UFC, but boy did he make his impact. Taking on the legend Frank Mir, Sims used Mir's attempts to touch gloves as a way to score a sneaky takedown. And then, for whatever reason, he decided to grab the fence to maintain balance and stop Mir repeatedly in the face. Baffling, right? Well, he was immediately disqualified and subsequently KO'd by Mir in the rematch. In his final UFC fight against Mike Kyle, he was actually bitten by his opponent, which seemed like a solid dose of karma, don't you think? Usamir Palhares. If you've even heard the name Usamir Palhares mentioned before, you'll know that this guy has a reputation that precedes him. A fantastic BJJ fighter who really could have made something of himself, Palhares managed to totally mess up his career on numerous occasions due to his very strange habit of holding onto leg locks for way longer than he should. Palhares is very, very good at snatching legs, but there have been multiple instances of him totally ignoring the referee and continuing to crank his opponent's limbs after the tap. It got him kicked out of the UFC and several other promotions he went on to fight in. A shockingly dirty fighter. Jon Jones. Some fighters have earned their place on this list for their actions inside the cage. Others have gotten in because of PED suspensions that may have thrown some of their best work into question. Depending on how you judge the career of Jon Jones, he might be the most guilty fighter on this list. Several run-ins with USADA cast some real doubt over Jones' in-cage accomplishments, whether he was simply a victim of contaminated supplements or accidentally ingested traces of banned substances on a bender during his peak party years. That's up to you. But what we can say for certain is that Jones is without question the worst eye poker in the history of the UFC. His long reach definitely doesn't help him in this regard, but the way he uses his outstretched arm to stave off attacks has hurt so many of his opponents in the past. Jones has a sketchy history, that's for sure, and it makes his inclusion on this list a no-brainer. Thanks for watching, fight fans. We'll be back soon.